And earlier she threatened Texas Senator Ted Cruz.
It's Ted Cruz. I mean, like, this dude has to be knocked over the head, like, hard, right? Like, there is no niceties with him.
Kathy Adams is the former chairman of the Republican Party of Texas.
What she has said about the governor is beyond the pale. What she said about Ted Cruz was despicable. This woman is so out of sync with every Texan and an embarrassment for the entire nation. So my hope is that she would resign. And no, a censor is not enough. She needs to resign.
And Adams says Republicans are already gearing up for a 2026 congressional campaign to oust Crockett from office. I'm Chad Groening.
Victims of Tesla attacks include a wheelchair-bound woman in Wichita. Chris Woodward has more.
Abigail Gill was eating with her family at an Olive Garden when the attack on her vehicle occurred. She told Fox and Friends that it's sad and disappointing to see these things happening.
It's not hurting Elon at all. It's just hurting the families that are getting such valuable things damaged.
The incident occurred on camera. Police have a male suspect, but Gill has not been given a name yet. She said the suspect was at the same restaurant and actually walked by her family's table.
He was very recognizable because of his pajama pants.
One estimate Gill received for repairs came out to around $7,000. People have reached out to her to pay for the damages, something Gill said is a great thing to see in these times.
But I just think that the only person who needs to pay a single dime is the guy who thought it was okay to do this. I think Tesla is just an overall great car. It's an amazing American-made company, but it also has incredible accessibility features that allow me to drive long distances just like everybody else.
I'm Chris Woodward.
More news online at afn.net and the AFN mobile app. I'm Rusty P.
What we believe about the Bible is based on what we believe about its source.
The God Who Speaks, the award-winning documentary from the American Family Association, is now available in a special limited edition DVD set. This release includes a Sunday school curriculum and 2 hours of additional footage. Go to thegodwhospeaks.org to get your copy today. thegodwhospeaks.org. Welcome to Today's Issues, offering a Christian response to the issues of the day. Here's your host, Tim Wildman, President of the American Family Association.
Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network. Thanks for listening to AFR on this Thursday, March the 27th, 2025. And in studio with me today is Ed Vitagliano. Good morning, Brother Ed.
Good morning, Tim.
Fred Jackson.
Good morning, Tim, and I apologize.
How's that?
Well, I didn't get the memo. I don't think you got the memo either.
What's that? What did I do wrong? Did I dress wrong?
It's Chris and Ed.
Oh, Chris.
Oh, with green.
Chris Woodward. Good morning, Brother Chris.
Yeah, they're Twinkies.
Yeah.
You know, I never have liked the word
I don't
Twinkies.
know, Fred. That sounds
okay. Now, eating a Twinkie is one thing.
Yes.
I'm in favor of that.
Right.
But calling Chris and me Twinkies is...
Can I tell people what's going on?
Yeah.
I know there are millions watching on our video.
Millions.
Just for the eye candy that we are. But Chris and Ed are wearing the same shirts.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
One time, Fred and I wore the same pullover jacket. So
they're green with our American Family Association logo on.
I'm on next Tuesday. Let me know what you're wearing and all.
Okay. Well, these, the word, Fred, I wouldn't have gone with Twinkies.
Twinkies.
Okay.
Cannolis.
Listen,
but no.
I'm about to leave the show.
That is what you call people who.
Yeah.
I don't know if I hope Ed and Chris didn't text each other this morning.
No.
What are you wearing? I don't know. What are you wearing?
I assure you. I did.
Anyway, but Twinkies does sound a little feminine.
Oh, okay.
I would back off that one. So.
Hey, before we get started,
we're already started.
Oh, we're already started.
Yeah.
I mean, before
it's going uphill from here.
Before we get started on the important news of the day, despite the Twinkie comment, Fred, I do want to applaud you.
Oh.
And let our listeners know. Now, a lot of people don't know this, but Fred played hockey
Yes.
In
day.
high school. Did you play in college?
Yeah, Gordon College.
Gordon
in,
College.
in just north of Boston there.
Tell our listeners about the call you got, if you don't mind, and the fact that your high school team's going to be in the.
Let him tell it.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, I played hockey, high school, back in the early 70s. And I obviously lost contact with my fellow players on the team for decades.
High school and college.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yes. So I got a voicemail when I came into work the other day. I had a voicemail, and a guy introduced himself, and he said, "Just wanted to let you know that I didn't know there was a Hockey Hall of Fame in Cape Breton, Nova Scotia, but that our high school team is being inducted into that Hockey Hall of Fame there in Cape Breton." So that came as quite a shock. So I had a long conversation with this gentleman yesterday and got caught up in some of the
Are
players.
you going back for it, for the ceremony?
There's going to be a follow-up call with details about this. So we'll see when that is. Yeah.
Well,
Kind of neat.
I
Kind of
think
neat.
that's special.
Absolutely.
I know it's not a national Hall of Fame, but that's quite an honor.
Yes.
So in Nova Scotia,
Well, hockey, you know this. Hockey is big. There is an AHL team in.
Hockey's like football in America. Right? Am I right?
It is very much so. You know, people ask me,
Like in
"Do
Canada.
you remember the first time you put skates on?" And I honestly, I don't.
Yeah.
you're that young.
That young. You know, it just happens. That's the way it is.
I remember the one and only time I put skates on.
Was it a good thing?
Actually, I know nobody cares about this, but I'll tell it anyway. In the winter of 1976, we were living in South Haven, Mississippi, which is just a suburb of Memphis.
Mm.
So that would probably offend people who live there. We're not a suburb. Anyway, a community south of Memphis over the state line. But my dad was pastoring.
Okay.
But it got so cold that, which is unusual, and that a lake froze almost solid.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, it was, if you go back and look at if people who lived through that, you remember in the mid-'70s, there was some absolutely frigid winters across the country.
That's when they were predicting a new ice age.
Yes.
The
You remember the
climate
Ohio River froze?
Yeah.
Yes.
J.J. Jasper, who lived in Owensboro, Kentucky, talks about taking a truck out there or something like that. I wouldn't advise that.
No.
but anyway, well, maybe he just saw people doing that.
Yeah.
But it was some way or another I came across some ice skates. They weren't new. They were like used or something.
Yeah.
Maybe somebody from the north moved down and we bought them at a
garage
sale or something like that. Anyway, put those dudes on and went out there and skated around there on the pond
with your ankles turned in.
You know,
Turned out.
I don't know. You know what? I don't think anybody was watching me. I could have drowned.
Do that back in the day. Yeah.
This is back before people cared about safety, I guess.
Yeah.
Kids just did things crazy like that. But anyway, I just remember that. But congratulations to you, Fred.
Well,
I just thought that was an honor. I just wanted to mention.
Like I said, I didn't realize there was a Hockey Hall of Fame there in my home area. So it's kind of neat. I'll keep you guys up to date.
Okay, and if you do go back, we want pictures.
Absolutely.
Or it didn't happen.
Okay, therefore.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for listening to American Family Radio. Chris, what is our first story?
Well, we begin with developing news out of Prince William County, Virginia, where this morning FBI Director Kash Patel, Attorney General Pam Bondi, and many others in the Trump administration announced the arrest of an illegal immigrant and top MS-13 leader for the Eastern Coast. I've got some audio here from various people. Let's begin with this one. It's Attorney General Pam Bondi, clip 2.
He was one of the top members, top 3 in the entire country, head of the East Coast, one of the 3 leaders, and I will say very violent crimes. Anything you can associate with MS-13, he was the leader over it. All of the violent crimes. So he's very dangerous. He should not have been in this country. He's from El Salvador, and he was recruited at a very early age, and and it rose to the leadership. And you have to be bad, you have to be tough to get there. But he is no longer tough because he is behind bars.
Now, this was part of a broader operation in Virginia that has actually nabbed more than 340 criminals in the past month alone, just in Virginia, one area of Virginia.
So this is the new Justice Department,
yes,
and FBI at work doing what we always thought of them as doing.
It's not the Injustice Department.
Yes, and so instead of going after grandmas, or moms showing up at school board meetings or people peacefully praying outside of abortion clinics, they're going after real criminals. This is what we always thought the Justice Department and the FBI did, and so the Trump administration has turned over a new leaf.
Hey, this guy was 24 years old. That's stunning.
Yeah,
that he was. And for those who don't know, MS-13 is it Central American or Mexican?
No, I think it's El Salvadoran.
Okay, they're a gang like the Bloods and the Crips. Remember those names?
Right.
The MS-13, and they are one of the more violent criminal gangs, and they're in the U.S. and so this is a big deal to arrest the one of the top leaders.
Yes.
So MS stands for Mara Salvatrucha, and you're right. It is not just an El Salvadoran gang anymore. It originated there, but it's international.
It was very interesting. Governor of Virginia, Glenn Youngkin, was at this news conference announcing this morning, and he said this couldn't have happened back several months ago when Biden was still in control. He said the task force that carried out this operation this morning just came into being since Donald Trump became president again, and in fact was just formed in the last month. And that is why, for this takedown this morning, Attorney General Bondi and the head of the FBI, Kash Patel, were in what looks like a trailer nearby, and there were cameras everywhere. They were able to watch this go down. And Pam Bondi says, it was state people involved with this, obviously federal people, and even local police. And Kash Patel had high praise for the local police, saying that they're going to be able to work with the feds to take these bad guys down.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the main commitments / promises that then candidate Donald Trump made to the voters was a crackdown on violent gangs in America.
Yeah.
Especially those that are, any violent gang, but he's talking the foreign-based gangs that are operating inside the United States. He promised to go after them, and this is one of the. This is a big. What would you say? Achievement.
It is
in that regard.
By the way, I mispronounced the name. It's Mara Salvatrucha.
I knew you did that, but I didn't want to point it out.
Yes, that's my apologies.
That's okay. I think most people would probably mispronounce that. But
I'd Mississippiize it,
Pardon me?
I would say it like I think it is.
Mara Salvatrucha.
That's over there by Itabena.
All right. Anyway, that's big news out of the Washington, D.C. area because this fellow was arrested in Northern Virginia, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Now, to go with this, and the Trump administration is intent on getting rid of bad guys. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem herself paid a visit to a prison in El Salvador where we have sent many illegal immigrants apprehended in the U.S., and we've got some audio of her sharing a message to anybody else that's here illegally. Clip 4. I'm sorry, clip 3.
If you come to our country illegally, this is one of the consequences you could face. First of all, do not come to our country illegally. You will be removed and you will be prosecuted. But know that this facility is one of the tools in our toolkit that we will use if you commit crimes against the American people.
We have this story on our website, afn.net.
Well, listen, applause to the Trump DOJ, Pam Bondi and Kash Patel for
Kristi Noem, what's her title?
DHS Secretary.
The Department of Homeland Security.
Yes, sir.
Sorry, Ed.
No, listen, we have noted for the 4 years of the Biden administration, when the Department of Justice and the FBI, let's just put it mildly, were misbehaving. Okay, we always pointed out that our suspicion was that a lot of the rank and file FBI members were probably as aghast as the rest of us were at the misuse of power and the misuse of authority in the Biden Department of Justice. So I look forward to the day when the FBI's reputation is restored by it fulfilling its proper role under the Trump administration.
Just want to mention, if you go to our website, afn.net, we have a video of Kristi Noem that was taken yesterday as she stood in front of the cells containing dozens of these criminals from El Salvador. They were taken to a prison, El Salvador. Some of them are from Venezuela. But it's worth going to look at this, and that's where she recorded this yesterday. And basically, she's trying to send a signal to anybody else in this country who may be part of these gangs. This is where you're going to end up.
Right.
It is not very nice. It is not like some of the medium custody prisons that we have in this country with color TV and everything else. These prison cells have racks in them. These people are in these cells for 23 and a half hours a day. There are no mattresses on these racks. This is a horrible place.
Yeah, it's got a reputation.
Yes.
As a prison
Yes.
in El Salvador. So, yeah, listen, I hope that a lot of these gang members will self-deport.
Yeah.
I hope that is part of the.
That's the reason they're doing this.
I hope this is part of the fallout of what they're doing, so that these people can go back to their own country and deal with the law enforcement there.
Meanwhile, a federal appeals court has refused to lift an order barring the Trump administration from deporting Venezuelan illegals deemed to be a threat to Americans. This was a split three-judge panel yesterday at the U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit, which upheld a March 15th order temporarily prohibiting deportations under the Alien Enemies Act of 1798.
Yeah.
They're now going to challenge this to higher powers, that being either the full D.C. Circuit in what's called an en banc hearing, or they're just going to go directly to the U.S. Supreme Court and hope to get a ruling in their favor.
Yeah, and this is also, by the way, an article that appears on American Family News, AFN.net, folks. Do encourage you to check out AFN.net to get a lot of the latest of the news stories. I don't think it matters if this goes to the full panel of the D.C. Appeals Court. I think this is going to wind up at the Supreme Court, because this is, frankly, let me just say this. I was going to say this is an abuse of judicial authority. I do see. I mentioned this. Let's see. Today's Thursday. I think I mentioned this yesterday, or Monday. I agree with what the Trump administration is doing in deporting these individuals. Okay, no, I don't want anyone to doubt that. But you can run into procedural issues doing it this quickly, and I think that some federal judges are going to try to hang their rulings on procedural grounds. But I think the Supreme Court has to step in and say, first of all, a district judge cannot stop a nationwide
not
ruling.
Issue. A federal judge. One federal judge cannot issue a national
injunction.
Yeah,
I hope, and then I hope the Supreme Court clarifies the fact that the executive branch has authority to execute its constitutional duties, and judges can't get in the way of that unless there's a clear constitutional issue involved. It seems to me that if people are here in the country illegally, you may have some procedural protections, but you can't stop the executive branch from saying, we don't like what you're doing, and you've already broken the law to get in here. You're leaving. I don't know what the issue is here with these judges.
Very interesting. Pardon me. There was another appeals court decision, the Ninth Circuit, late yesterday, This has to do with Trump's firing of 16,000 probationary federal workers. Same thing again. Clinton appointed judge says, no, you can't do that to Donald Trump and his administration. Went to the Ninth Circuit, split decision, but it goes in favor of that lower court judge. In both cases now, I was reading this morning where the Trump administration is now going to the United States Supreme Court on both of those issues with the argument that you just articulated that we have a right to do these things.
Yes.
So it's going to land in Chief Justice John Roberts' court.
Well, it needs to, and it needs to soon. The Supreme Court of the United States needs to rule on this, because if they rule with these liberal lower level courts, lower level, I mean lower under the Supreme Court, if they were to rule with them, you got real problems that you will basically neuter the executive branch's ability to control our border in particular.
And President Trump's not going to allow that. I don't think if the Supreme Court makes that tragic misstep.
I don't think they will, by the way.
Right.
I think they're going to rule at least 5-4, maybe 6-3 in favor of the president.
Well,
go ahead.
I was going to mention that I was listening to Jenna Ellis's show this morning, and Steve Deace was on there.
We did.
I'm not
yes.
sure which clip you have of Steve.
Yeah, this is Steve Deace talking to Jenna about his prediction of where justices, including Chief Justice John Roberts,
That's
might
the
come
one
down
I
on
was
this
looking for.
particular issue. We can play it now, clip 6.
John Roberts is not an ideologue. He's an institutionalist. He views himself as the last man standing defending America's institutions. And so if you're the Colorado State Supreme Court that thinks you can nullify an election before it happens, he steps in. And if you think you're the Biden administration that can use institutions to mass poison people to the point that they'll lose all of their trust in vaccines in the public health sector, he'll step in. He's against whoever he views as disrupting institutions. And I think at the very least, as the threat of this looms, I think you could actually see Roberts step in for fear that Trump would do this and therefore destroy the entire canard of Roberts' existence.
Yeah, I agreed with Steve Deace on this issue. And his point, he went on to explain further that if you push Donald Trump into a corner, Donald Trump is going to say, I'm the executive branch. This is what Abraham Lincoln did. Mm-hmm. Abraham Lincoln basically said, you want to stop me, Judge? Go ahead and try. You don't have an army, okay? And I think that's what Donald Trump would wind up doing. He would say to these federal judges.
I hope it didn't come to that.
And that would be
that's a constitutional crisis.
It is a constitutional crisis. We would complain if a president who is a Democrat did this.
Yeah.
So this would, and I think what Steve Deace is saying is that John Roberts is smart enough to see that that's what's going to result, and he's going to have to slap these judges down.
Yeah.
Otherwise, Trump's going to say, well, forget it.
Otherwise, what you end up with, if you follow, it seems to me, if you follow these liberal federal judges in what they've ruled, it's an ACLU type extreme position of every one of these deportees. Is that what you would call them? Deportees?
Yeah.
Would be be given public attorneys and have their cases adjudicated from now till the Lord returns.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Millions.
Individually.
Millions of people.
Yeah. It's just insane.
Right.
So again, if you are a U.S. citizen, I know you've explained to me before, Ed, and you're right that there are certain caveats to this. Sometimes non-citizens do have a right to their day in court, so to speak. But what we're talking about here is are non-citizens of the United States being granted all kind of, constitutional rights that citizens have, mm-hmm. and U.S. citizens have. And so, anyway, it would really, I said neuter, it would really tie the hands of the president if the Supreme Court were to agree with these lower courts. All right, you're listening to today's issues on the American Family Radio Network. In the meantime, the overall issue here is that President Trump and his team, Tom Homan, Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, Kristi Noem, others, they are tirelessly at work trying to clean up our country, clean up our streets from violent criminals. And it's interesting to me, I've seen surveys where people, even in blue cities, Chicago, Boston, New York, for example, who vote Democrat, when asked, are you glad that President Trump is going after the bad guys on the streets? They say, yeah, we are. Deport them.
Yeah.
Huh? These are people who vote Democrat.
This has been hugely popular. And the fact that we've had 4 years of chaos.
Yes, we have.
Because of the Biden administration's policies. And to your point, giving 10 to 12 to 15, maybe 20 million people who entered this country illegally under Joe Biden, giving them all their day in court and saying, no, you've got to prove that this is a gang member.
Right.
And you can't check his tattoos. All right, that's absurd. The chief executive, the president, should be able to say, while people who aren't citizens have many constitutional protections if they're here legally, if you're here illegally, we can deport you no matter what we decide is a justifiable reason.
Right.
And the big news again today, as Chris led off with, the arrest in Northern Virginia of one of the top 3 leaders of the MS-13 gang, 24-year-old fella, and it's big national news. MS-13. I was going to say MSNBC, but they're another gang.
Another gang that should be deported.
They're also one of the worst of the worst. Fighting that house.
They probably have tattoos too.
Yeah. All right. So, yes, ladies and gentlemen, Rachel Maddow has been arrested today. And, all right.
We'll be MSNBC tattoo, clearly visible.
We'll be back momentarily.
It's my turn.
Here is your host for My Turn, Don Wildman.
Jesus told us to beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are wolves. You'll know them by their fruits. Are grapes gathered from thorns or figs from thistles? Some years ago, the following item appeared in the newspaper. Quote, the author of the disparaging book The Passover Plot, which states that Christ's crucifixion was faked to fulfill Old Testament prophecies about the Messiah, now questions the whole authority of the Christian church. Now Dr. Hugh Schoenfield, in Those Incredible Christians, lashes out at what he calls vested beliefs and ecclesiastical rubbish. The 68-year-old Jewish scholar is allegedly without a religious creed of his own, believing in God as pure spirit. End of quote. Well, now, how about that? Here's a man who, he himself admits, doesn't know what he believes, telling millions of people that their belief is rubbish. Well, personally, I'm tired of folks like Dr. Schoenfield. I'm tired of these self-appointed authorities who don't know what is right, except that everybody else is wrong. Yes, I'm tired. Tired of all the people who say God is dead who never knew he was alive. They live in their ivory palaces behind the sacred walls of education and spin out fancy theories about the nothingness of God. They never go down to the grave and watch a mother lay her child into the cold, hard earth. They never go to the hospital where the father of 4 young children is dying with cancer. They aren't ever called by the wife whose husband is an alcoholic. But they are sure after reading the textbooks that there is no God. I'm tired. Tired of the people who say the Bible is a lie who've never even read it. Our society is full of them, these intellectual illiterates who speak in pure ignorance of the subject matter. I'm tired. Tired of the people who say the church of today is irrelevant because we haven't been able to provide everybody with a mansion on the hill, a high income, a meaningful job, and the best social standing. I'm tired, yes. I'm tired of these fine people who say they can accept Christ as a great moral teacher, but not as the Son of God or the Savior of men. Little do these people realize the absurdity of their statement. A good moral teacher, but not God? If he wasn't the Son of God, indeed God himself, and did what he did and said what he said, then he was a blundering, blind, ignorant fool. Stupid, crazy. He was either who he said he was, or he was a crazy idiot. But you will have to accept one of those descriptions of him. God incarnate or stupid madman. Unfortunately, the New Testament just doesn't leave room for you to classify him as a great moral teacher, but not God himself. Yes, I'm tired of these know-it-alls who don't know what they believe. And let me add just one final word to them. They say they're searching for truth. If this be true, then maybe one day they will find what many of us have already found. You see, we have already found truth. We found it in a lowly Nazarene, apart from whom no truth can ever be found.
This has been My Turn with Don Wildman, a production of the American Family Association.
Be silent before me so that I may speak. Then let come upon me what may. Why should I take my flesh in my teeth and put my life in my hands? Though he slay me, I will hope in him. Job 13 through 15.
American Family Radio. This is today's issues. Email your comments to comments@afr.net. Past broadcasts of today's issues are available for listening and viewing in the archive at afr.net. Now, back to more of today's issues.
Hey, welcome back, everybody, to the radio program Today's Issues on American Family Radio. Well, we have a guest right now, and he has quite an amazing story to tell, and it's featured in our latest magazine that we provide here at American Family Association in the March 2025 edition of The Stand. That's the name of the magazine. We have a feature on a gentleman, Bill Avery, William Avery, and he. I called Bill and talked to him on the phone a couple of days ago, and I said, why don't you come on the radio with me and tell your story? And he said, I'd be glad to. So good morning to you, Bill.
Well, good morning, Mr. Wildman. Yeah. It's really a pleasure on my part to be with you this morning.
Well, you're welcome, and call me Tim, okay?
Oh, all right,
please,
I can do that.
Please do that. I'm calling you Bill, and I don't even know you that well, and you're really William. So, but anyway.
Well, I've been called a lot of things at 92. I can handle that.
92 years old. You were 30, man, when I came into the world. That's amazing.
Oh.
Where do you live?
Well, I'm about 25 miles south of Battle Creek, Michigan, which is a good-sized city east of Kalamazoo by about 20 miles. I'll get it right here.
I got you. Well, listen, we've got your story here in our latest magazine. Why don't you take us back, and for our listeners who are hearing this for the first time, they haven't read the story in our magazine. Tell us your life story, if you would.
Well, I was born in St. Joseph, Missouri. Well, in the area. I really don't know where it was, but it was Missouri. And my family, it was really a miracle of sorts, because I didn't know anything until actually about 7 years ago at 86 years old. And but through all of this, I discovered that my mother, as just a very young 15-year-old, was raped. And so I don't know the circumstances, but being 15, she was vulnerable, and I don't understand any of that, but she didn't get an abortion. This is the most important part, I believe, and because of that, I lived. And but about 2 months before I was born, a young man came along, and excuse me, but anyway, he rescued her in a sense, and he married her about 2 months before I was born. And so the nice thing about that is that I didn't have to go, or he didn't have to go through an adoption or anything. I just assumed, or he just assumed that I was his son. Of course, he knew the difference. And so here I am. My name is Avery, out of gratitude more than anything else.
That was your father, who was not your biological dad, obviously. That was his last name.
That's right.
Okay, Avery,
That's
which
right.
you still carry with you today. Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, and then, but I went through life, and actually when I was 11, a breakup of the family went through, and all kinds of things there that usually happen in those situations.
Your parents got divorced,
and,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, sadly got divorced. So I'm trying to fill in some of the, excuse me for interrupting, but your siblings were 9 and 7. So there was you, 11 years old, and your siblings 9 and 7, and your parents got divorced. And so, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I had a 1-year-old sister as well.
Okay.
At that point in time. So, but through all of this, finally, when I got out of high school, of course, I'd been through some other things there that pushed me into a farm life as a hired hand at 16. It was an experience I'll never forget, and I don't regret it. But the day started at 4 a.m. and usually ended at 8 o'clock at night. So, but I was paid handsomely for it. I was getting $15 a week.
Wow.
And but then when I graduated from high school, had no home or anything, and I left that farm. But I discovered I didn't have a birth certificate. And not only that, I couldn't find one. Nobody knew I was born. And so I lived my whole life without a birth certificate. And so I think it might have even helped keep me out of the draft. Not that I was trying to dodge it, but they didn't know I was here. And about 1964, things began to unfold for me. I was 31 at the time, and I realized that as much as I seemed to be drawn to God, I just wasn't responding very good. And so that's when I accepted Christ as my Savior. And as you were mentioning earlier, it was real, and I've trusted that ever since. So it's now been 61 years since that happened, and the rest is history. But it's great.
We're talking to William Avery, 92 years old, from the state of Michigan, telling us his life story. He was born as a result of his mother being raped at the age of 15, but she didn't get an abortion, obviously, which is why he's talking to us today. And he had a very difficult life for a lot of years. Bill did, and he's got. But I'm looking at a picture of you, Bill, and I tell you what. Before I get to that, did you have a question for Bill?
I did, Bill. This is Ed. I do want to let our listeners know that Chris has posted this story, this article, on our Today's Issues Facebook page. And you can go to afa.net and click on the stand, and this issue will come up, and you can navigate towards this story. But one of the things that struck me, Bill, about your story is and Stacy Singh did a wonderful job writing this story about how you came to Christ. You spent your life, a good part of your life, hosting teenagers and doing ministry. But it says also that you feel like your greatest legacy is your family, and it mentions 4 children, a foster son, all married, 18 grandchildren, 10 of whom are married, 13 great-grandchildren. That's 50 people, most of whom would never have existed if Avery, born unwanted to the point of being abandoned, had had his life snuffed out with an abortion. That is an astonishing story about how important this pro-life issue is. Your family is now over 50 people, you said in this story, just because you lived.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and that was the focus really of a note that I sent to American Family back in the summer, and apparently Tim picked up on that, and they called me in December to feature it in the March issue. But one of the things that wasn't really very clear, I think, is that when the divorce occurred in 1944, actually, when I was 11, and eventually my mother, or our mother, abandoned us. And as a result of that, I became kind of the adult in the family until my dad, or our dad, discovered that we had been abandoned. And but then for the next almost 3 years, I really was a caregiver for my 2 brothers. And God knew what he was doing, because otherwise social services probably would have moved in and taken us away from our dad. And because, since when does an 11-year-old have this experience and everything to manage some younger siblings? And so
wow.
I managed to get through that in I think a very marvelous way, and miracle way, you might say.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm grateful for all that experience, because it did help me in working with young people. I was a youth leader for over 30 years, and then I was unpaid. I was a volunteer, but I took it serious. Then me and my wife, we also run a camp that for young people that we handled 50 a week for 4 weeks in the summer. We did that for over 30 years. Now, and I was motivated, I believe, by my experience of being a boy from a broken home, never had a mother after I was 11, and kind of feel it even today. Mothers are important.
Amen.
Extremely important. But when you don't have a benefit of growing up with them and having that nurturing spirit about their children, there's an absence there, and there's no way to fill it.
Yeah.
But for me, Christ did that, but I was 31 years old.
Yeah. We've been talking to William Avery, Bill, and his story is in our latest magazine. Quite a life story. He's 92 years old, lives in Michigan, and well, listen, Bill, we thank you so much for being our guest this morning, and it's a beautiful picture of your family there in our magazine. Again, we posted that story at our Today's Issues Facebook page. And thank you for being our guest this morning, and thank you for supporting us here at American Family.
Well, I would like to close with this. Those grandchildren, they all spoil me rotten. Every one of them.
Amen. And how many great-grandchildren do you have?
There's 13.
Wow. Do you know all their names?
And one on the way.
I'm just kidding. It's hard for me to keep up with my 11 grandchildren's names. Well, listen, Bill, by the way, is it springtime yet in Michigan?
Well, it's supposed to have happened on the 21st.
Oh, I got you. Officially, right? Well, anyway, it'll be warm soon enough. Listen, Bill, thanks so much. Thanks so much for being on our guest, and may God grant you many more years of health.
Well, hey, thank you very much. This is a very special moment for me, and to be cognizant enough to even carry on a conversation is wonderful.
Amen.
Yes.
Thank you. Appreciate it. That's Bill Avery joining
Wow.
us. Yeah.
I hope that if the Lord tarries,
Yeah.
I can be that articulate
At 92.
At 92.
I know.
I would have guessed 60s.
Yes.
I know.
I already look 92.
Yeah.
Well, by the way, I do want to remind people, if you have Facebook, you can.
Yes.
Chris has graciously posted this article on our Facebook page. If you don't have Facebook, you can go to afa.net, and there's a little tab at the top that says The Stand, and you want to choose the print version when you have the drop-down menu, and the March issue is located there. You may have to scroll through it a little bit to find this article, but it's titled The Amazing Life, Times, and Legacy of William Avery.
And the easiest way to make sure you get our magazine every month is by writing a check to us here at American Family Association, American Family Radio. So a donation of any size gets you on our eternal mailing list, which you can never get off of.
It's not technically true, but
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
If they want it to be true, it will be true.
Right. But the way to get our monthly magazine, which is excellent, by the way, is simply make a financial donation to our ministry, American Family Association, American Family Radio. If people want to, if you're listening to me right now, you haven't made a donation to AFA and AFR, we're going to have our spring share-a-thon coming up in a couple of weeks, and that'd be a great time for you to make your first gift to us here and help us out, okay? Because we have to have, we're not like public radio or public television, which we're going to talk about later. Our existence is solely on the provision of, well, obviously God, but God's people making donations to our ministry. That's the only way we're able to be on the radio, be on the air. All right, you're listening to Today's Issues on American Family Radio. Next story, Chris.
Well, I want to remind everybody that we need to continue being in prayer for storm victims, particularly Hurricane Helene victims over in North Carolina several months ago. 6 months ago or so, since that hurricane made landfall in that part of the country and caused...
But it didn't make landfall there.
Well, it made landfall in the south and then caused catastrophic flooding in North Carolina.
September.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Now, I bring this up because I've got a couple of clips from a lady named Mona Roper. She was on Fox and Friends earlier today explaining the ongoing needs of North Carolinians and even the voices there that are in support for doing things like ending FEMA, arguing the system is flawed and ultimately causing more harm to Americans here. I've got a couple of clips, beginning with this one, clip 14.
It would be great to see changes. Samaritan's Purse has been great here in the community, but the FEMA has not. We still have a lot of people lacking FEMA support. I'm lacking FEMA support myself. And it's just something that I think to do away with FEMA, as she's speaking, is absolutely the correct way that they should proceed. I don't think the system is capable of being revamped. Mm-hmm. There's just so many loopholes and no one knowing exactly what they're supposed to do. It seems in the FEMA organization that it is causing the people who are desperately in need of help to suffer even more.
Now, I bring this up for a couple of reasons. Number one, to put it back out there and remind people that these folks are still dealing with loss. But also, unfortunately, news media do things like time and other issues that do pop up. A lot of people, when you don't hear about this in the news, you don't realize it's still an issue. So I'm trying to bring it back up into a show called Today's Issues.
You know,
heard the interview. Yeah, I heard the interview this morning. Do you know there are people still living in tents? They have spent the winter in tents because they have no housing. She was talking about bridges still being out. They can't get to the site of their houses. Now this is 6 or 7 months into this, and there's no excuse for this. No excuse.
The comments about the FEMA agency being and the system being broken, I think is valid. I mean, we've all heard stories. All I did was search for FEMA empty trailers, and there are still stories about unused FEMA trailers seen in Prattville landfill. Okay, and we all know that I think it was during Katrina and other times, these, all these trailers that FEMA purchases and then for some reason has no ability to get to people. So I certainly appreciate the impulse on the part of a lot of Americans to say, yeah, we need, as a people, to help individuals when they get in trouble. We kind of pool our resources and get them help. But if they're not getting help, which is the case after Hurricane Helene, it devastated parts of North Carolina, then why do we have FEMA?
Yeah.
I mean, if they're incapable of doing what private Christian organizations are able to do, 8 Days of Hope and then Samaritan's Purse and others, they're able to get in.
Yeah.
So why can't the federal government? I think for a lot of Americans, this is just a federal boondoggle.
I should know the answer to this question, being a reporter, but I've never lived in an America without a FEMA. It was started in 1979, much like Department of Ed. So obviously there was a day not that long ago when we had, something, FEMA didn't exist. What did we do after Hurricane Camille or something from the 70s?
I think what happened was the president would declare an area to be a national emergency, put in a state of emergency. A governor would do the same thing. And then federal tax dollars would flow to the state, and then the state would handle getting the supplies needed to the individuals who are in trouble. I think that was what used to happen before FEMA. But FEMA now, as federal agencies often do, they come in and they say, hey, we got it. Well, they don't got it, to use
Next story,
poor
Chris.
English.
Have you guys ever been on a plane that turned around?
No.
Somebody forgot
on
something?
on a tarmac or something?
No, they've already left the airport. They're in the air. They've been in the air for a while, and then you get an
someone
announcement.
acts up and
Attention passengers, we're turning this plane around. Something like that.
I know. I've just read or seen.
Well, interestingly enough, it happened.
Have you?
No, it has not happened to me, but it happened to a lot of people on a United Airlines Boeing flight from L.A. to Shanghai over the weekend.
Where, Chris?
They were
L.A. to Shanghai.
They were shanghaied.
Thank you. Yes, I see what you did there.
Is that what is that the name of the?
It is
China.
Yes,
Shanghai, right?
Well, it's going specifically to Shanghai. An L.A. to Shanghai flight had to turn around last weekend after it was discovered one of the pilots had taken off without his passport. They were in the air for a couple of hours when they had to make the announcement to a plane full of passengers that we're turning this thing around.
No, if I'm one of the passengers, I'd say, hey, you can just use mine. Just stand behind me, a couple people, and I'll slip it back to you. Okay, but we ain't going back.
He didn't have his passport.
He didn't have his passport. About 2 hours later, the plane turned around and was redirected to San Francisco.
Did he tell them that? Did he tell the passengers that?
Yes. They took off from L.A.
goodness.
en route to Shanghai, which is a place in China.
I think it's Shanghai.
Shanghai. Well,
yeah, you got close though.
Yeah.
Shanghai.
There you go. It was redirected to San Francisco, where it was landed around 5 p.m. local time. The pilot didn't have the passport on board. They told the passengers.
It's not a good look for United Airlines.
No. Well, at least it wasn't like a mechanical problem.
This is where it's probably helpful if the pilot does the voice where you can't understand what he's saying, which is we've all heard that. Every other time I get on an airplane, this is Captain John and the front deck, just okay, yeah. We're going over Chicago, and then we'll be
mechanical.
We should have some weather problems over North Dakota. Have a safe trip, everybody.
Yeah.
That's what he needs to do.
Rapid fire.
So, hello, this is Captain John, and you're not gonna believe this, people. I left my passport back in Los Angeles.
Captain John is now flying a Cessna.
I am so sorry.
Right.
But if you're wondering why we're turning around, I got to go back and get that thing. I know right where I left it. It was right at Five Guys. I had a burger bag waiting on me. They called our flight.
Yeah.
So,
and then he
just
says,
give me a second when I get off the plane. I'll be right back.
And then he says, and we're going to look back at this one day and all laugh at this.
So it took off from L.A. en route to this place in China that I've mispronounced twice.
That's all right.
And then they turned around after 2 hours. They went to San Francisco. Francisco, where they had a team of pilots waiting. They did have passports. Meanwhile, the passengers, 257 passengers on board, they received 2 meal vouchers totaling $30.
So you know what you do right there?
Man.
What you do right there, honestly. If you're the pilot and you discover you left your passport, my first question is you need to be paying attention to flying, not going through your pockets. Okay, all right. But the second thing here is you go ahead and fly and land, and then you deal with the fact that you don't have your passport. You don't.
Well, since it
turn the plane around.
Since it is in China and how strict they are,
yeah,
even in Shanghai.
Yeah. That's Ed mocking you, Chris, not me.
I think they probably would. They might arrest the guy. It might be that serious. Yeah. You entered. Here's a country that does it.
They don't
the
play.
Right way. You landed here illegally.
Straight to jail.
Anyway,
I'm not sure what
Yeah,
that
that was a very costly mistake too. Do you realize how much fuel was spent?
2 hours.
Take off, go out over the ocean, and then come back.
Because it's 2 hours out, 2 hours back, then 2 hours back towards China.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're talking $25,000 worth of fuel.
Okay. Can you imagine the pilot talking to the flight attendant? Hey, come here a second. Listen, can you go tell everybody that we had one of the pilots leave their passport?
I would say to the flight attendant, I'll give you $200 if you say it was you.
Right. 200. You got 2,000. I might do it, not 200.
Wow.
All right. So thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
We shall take a short time out right here and be back with more of today's issues on American Family Radio.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
Hey, if you're looking for family-friendly entertainment or resources to strengthen your walk with God, there's one name you should remember: American Family Studios. We don't just want to bring you shows, movies, and specials that will entertain or build up your family. We're committed to honoring God by making them both biblically sound and of the highest quality possible. Check us out at AmericanFamilyStudios.net.
This is American Family Radio, a listener-supported ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh. President Donald Trump announcing a 25% tariff on automobile imports. Madison Allworth has more.
He was saying that he really wants to onshore car manufacturing and incentivize automakers to build here. He says he's talked to the automakers, and the ones that have factories here are thrilled, and the ones that don't, they're going to have to get going and build them. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney says that the auto tariffs are a, quote, direct attack on his country, and that once he sees the details, he will take retaliatory measures. The EU Commission spokesperson also saying that the European Union will issue a response to new import tariffs in a timely manner. But Trump saying on Truth Social, quote, if the European Union works with Canada in order to do economic harm to the USA, large-scale tariffs will be placed on them both.
A political pundit says he doesn't know how such a classless hack like Jasmine Crockett got elected to Congress. Townhall.com's Guy Benson says she's not a good look for the Democrat Party.
Correct. She's a classless showboat. She's also a liar. Let's be clear about this. We all know what she meant by Governor Hot Wheels. Yep. She's claiming that it's a reference to Abbott's immigration policy of sending migrants all over the country. She also said that was only to black-led cities with black mayors, which is another lie, a racial one. But her own social media footprint disproves that. She's made jokes about Governor Abbott rolling around in the past, and she's liked other people's comments calling him Governor Hot Wheels before he was sending migrants anywhere. So she craves attention. She's got it for all the wrong reasons.
President Trump said Crockett is irrelevant and insignificant, and also said this.
She's a lowlife, and she's a very low IQ person.
A survivor of Hurricane Helene in North Carolina says people are still suffering, and many have received no help from FEMA. DHS Secretary Kristi Noem wants to eliminate FEMA, and North Carolina resident Mona Roper agrees.
It would be great to see changes. Samaritan's Purse has been great here in the community, but the FEMA has not. We still have a lot of people lacking FEMA support. I'm lacking FEMA support myself. We still have people in campers. We have people in tents. We have a lot of people who simply can't fill out the FEMA paperwork. And then they go to the FEMA office and they're not assisted. There just needs to be a complete overhaul of FEMA, or just doing something completely different that works with the people.
Some parents in a California county are frustrated as tampon machines have been installed in the boys' bathrooms.
North San Diego County school districts have put tampon machines not just in boys' bathrooms, but in elementary school boys' bathrooms. This is to comply with a state law, according to the College Fix. Greg Bird is president of California Family Council.
Now, this started back around 2021. The legislature passed something they called the Menstrual Equity for All Act, where they required feminine hygiene products in all bathrooms, both female and at least one male restroom. And that was only it was from 6th grade to 12th grade. You know, we made fun of that. We said this was crazy.
Burt said obviously they're not needed and that they're just going to be wasted. Sure enough, one report says a mother heard from a third party that some boys got the tampons wet to see how many they could stick to the ceiling. Some are saying it's a waste of taxpayer dollars. So how did this come about?
2 years ago, in 2023, we had an assembly member who's now a senator, Eloise Gomez-Reyes from San Bernardino, and she had a Girl Scout troop from her area introduce AB 230, which would now require feminine products down to the 3rd grade.
Burt said further, this sends a message to every little boy and little girl that even boys menstruate, not girls alone. He wanted to make sure parents understand that Girl Scouts are teaching this view of gender to your kids. I'm Bronson Woodruff.
Wall Street is getting pulled in different directions today as President Trump's latest tariff escalation creates winners and losers among auto stocks, while better than expected data on the economy helps support the market. I'm Rusty Peter.
The recent tornado outbreak has devastated so many people in the Midwest and the South. 8 Days of Hope is ready to deploy their rapid response ministry to Cave City, Arkansas and Tylertown, Mississippi from March 20th to April 5th in order to help those impacted restore what's been destroyed. If you're 18 or older, you can help. Visit 8daysofhope.com to find out how you can volunteer. This is an urgent need. Visit 8daysofhope.com today.
Today's Issues continues on AFR with your host, Tim Wildman, president of the American Family Association.
And welcome back. Tim Wildman, Ed Vitagliano, Fred Jackson, and Steve Jordahl. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning, everybody.
Folks, do want to remind you, as Tim mentioned last hour, next, 2 weeks, not next week, but the week after, is Share-a-thon. It is our April Share-a-thon, our spring Share-a-thon. And so we encourage you to be checking in for that. We depend on our listeners to support this ministry so that we can stay on the air. So that will be coming up in 2 weeks. So just a little reminder, please be praying for Share-a-thon. We pray here for Share-a-thon. We ask our listeners to pray as well, that God would provide what we need, and abundantly beyond what we can think or ask. So,
I need to correct one thing you said.
Sure.
It's Steve Paisley Jordahl.
Yes, Steve Paisley Jordahl.
I was about ready to cry.
Right. You. Anyway, I've given him that moniker.
It's stuck too.
It's stuck. People mail him Paisley shirts and stuff like that.
I know we have had people come to visit.
Yeah.
And they say, hey, is JJ here? Is Steve Paisley Jordahl here? So it is a nickname that is stuck.
And Steve's car is actually a Paisley.
Paisley
his automobile is covered in Paisley. So I'm just kidding about that. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning, Tim.
Fred's here with us. Fred, Ed, Tim, and Steve. Steve, what's your first story?
Well, we had an interesting hearing yesterday. The heads of the nation's top public broadcasting systems Services came to the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee. And
what committee?
The House Oversight and Government Reform Subcommittee.
Okay.
And so it was Catherine Marr is the president of NPR, and Paula Kerger,
National Public Radio,
is president of Public Broadcasting System, PBS. And they both took some heat. I'll give you some of the highlights, but Ms. Marr had, I think, probably the hardest time of it. So I want you to hear a little bit about this. This is when one of the representatives, and I'll tell you who it is when I hear the voice, asked Catherine Marr about the Hunter laptop story. First of all, the whole Republican thing is you're biased. You're biased. You shouldn't get the money. No, we're not biased. No, we're not biased. Well, tell me about the Hunter Biden thing, Cut 11.
First of all, I do want to say that NPR acknowledges that we were mistaken in failing to cover the Hunter Biden laptop story more aggressively and sooner.
It's unfortunate that NPR ignored the Hunter Biden laptop story.
Congressman, I would love to say that we actually believe we made a mistake on the Hunter Biden laptop story.
Okay, so the lady you just heard from there is the president or director, I don't know what her proper
president is her title,
of National Public Radio. Notorious, quite frankly, for their liberal bias. And so she's called on it here about some Republican congressmen, and she's admitting that, at least in that the Hunter Biden case, they made a big mistake by not covering it.
It was the only admission she made because the Republican congressman brought the receipts. And at one point, one of the House members asked Ms. Marr, so we took there was a book that was written by a whistleblower out of PBS. His name was Uri Berliner. And they had a lot of material in that to ask Catherine Marr about. And one of the things was Uri Berliner did a poll of editors in the Washington, D.C. area of the NPR. 57 Democrats, 0 Republicans. And you say you're not biased. No, we're not biased. What about
did she maintain?
Yeah.
What did she say in response to that?
No, we're not biased. One of the congressmen asked, how many times did your network have who's the congressman from California, now senator?
I don't know. I can't help you there.
Schiff.
Oh, yeah, Adam Schiff.
Adam Schiff, yeah.
I'm sorry. He asked, how many interviews did you do with Adam Schiff about Russiagate? I don't know. Well, would 13 sound about right? I guess it could be. How many interviews did you do with anybody about the Hunter Biden laptop story or Russia or any of the other things? 0. So the fact that they are, making an admission on one, it doesn't quite cut it. They're not. So the Republicans laid out the allegations of bias. The Democrats kind of, you see, the purpose of the hearing was actually Doge, and do we continue funding NPR and PBS out of, or is Doge going to take some of the money away? And so the Democrats just spent their time ragging on Doge and Elon Musk.
All right, listen. Public broadcasting was initially created by the federal government, I want to say in the 60s, but it was back in that era. And the idea was we need to have more, we need to be able to get the news and then with the children's shows, educational programming to the masses, right, in America who are underserved. This is one of the missions, or if not the main mission.
Well before the internet and cable.
Right. And the idea of public broadcasting, be it both TV and radio. National Public Radio, for example, which is you can go down the dial from where we are right now and pick up National Public Radio. They're usually from 88.1 to 91.9 on the FM dial, right where a lot of our American Family radio stations are located. Anyway, but that day of has passed, has long since passed. I don't mind if National Public Radio or public, what do you call it, the public broadcast?
Public broadcasting system.
They want to exist, fine. But don't take tax dollars.
Mm-hmm.
Just do your own fundraising like we do. And they get a lot of donations from corporations.
Mm-hmm.
The public broadcasting folks have.
Yeah.
You worked in Canada for
public broadcasting for about 20 years.
Yeah.
When I first started, way back in the 70s, Canadian Broadcasting Corporation Radio was run by a bunch of ex-BBC people. They would check your work, and if they saw any bias, this doesn't go on the air. It all changed in the 80s with new leaders that came in, and basically we're going to hire all left-wingers, and we're going to let them project their bias in their stories. It just changed 180 degrees.
Let me just give you just an up-to-date example of what you're talking about, Fred. So our writers for our magazine, The Stand, we're thinking of allowing them to take a short course on writing. It would be remote here through Associated Press.
Right.
So our editor, Rebecca Davis, sent me the topics that will be discussed. Okay. Now, we haven't decided. There's still probably a lot of good stuff that they can learn from this, but one of the sessions is about the lie of journalistic objectivity and why that has been jettisoned as a requirement for journalism. And I thought that would be shocking if I hadn't
quiet part out loud.
Yes, say the quiet part out loud. If I hadn't been hearing what you've been talking about for years and years, how it used to be that journalists were supposed to be objective, but that changed, I don't know, the last 10, 20 years to the principle that journalists should be agents of change.
That is right.
In the culture, rather than simply objectively reporting what's happening.
I wrote an article for the what was then called the Journal.
Yes.
And the title of the article was Agents of Change.
Yeah.
That's what they believe. And that's why the surveys that have been done of the mainstream journalists in this country, over 90% vote Democrat.
Yes.
So they're locked together.
But it's an echo chamber for a lot of them. They that's why when Fox News came on the scene, they just gained so much viewership.
Yeah.
They just immediately took over the top spot in cable news because there was nobody else giving the conservative viewpoint. They were all liberal,
right?
Yes,
in there because it's groupthink with a lot of these folks. Let me just give you one other example, and then we'll move on here. I'm reading from the National Review website, and they're talking about Miss what's her Marr?
Catherine.
She's
Marr.
no kin to Bill, right?
Not that we know.
Okay. So the article in the National Review about her appearance yesterday before Congress, they say when the New York Post first reported on Hunter Biden's laptop hard drive ahead of the 2020 presidential election, NPR ignored it and disregarded the facts at play, one of the congressmen said. Okay, so this is what I'm about to quote to you what then managing editor Terrence Samuels, then the NPR's managing editor,
right,
said in October 2020 about the laptop story, Hunter Biden laptop story. This is what Terrence Samuels said then, quote, "We don't want to waste our time on stories that are not really stories. And we don't want to waste the listeners' and readers' time on stories that are just pure distractions." Okay, well, as it turns out, yesterday, the acting president, made a public apology for not covering that story. But at the time, they were trying to make it, they were towing the liberal Democrat line, saying it's not worthy of coverage. That affected the election in some ways.
Yeah, and let me just say this, too, that I'm not even sure she apologized yesterday. She said,
admitted they made a mistake.
We made a mistake. And let me tell you the difference, okay, between saying you're wrong and saying you made a mistake. If I forget our anniversary, my wife and I, all right, I don't come to her and say, hey, I made a mistake. We all make mistakes. Let's just move on, okay? No, I say, I'm sorry, I was wrong. And to me, that's a pretty big difference on the way that Ms. Marr responded.
By the way, Ms. Marr in the past has referred to President Trump as, quote, a deranged racist sociopath, end quote.
What does that mean, though?
That's.
I can't. I parse those words.
There's a 56% chance she didn't vote for him.
56.
Well, she also called for reparations.
Yeah.
You know that?
Yes.
On racial.
And she argued with what that meant because she said, no, I didn't. And then the congressman who was questioning her said, well, here's the tweet.
Yes, she
tweeted,
did.
And she did. And she said, well, that's not necessarily. And then she went into.
Yeah, she said that's not what I meant. What I said was not what I meant. Anyway, next story, Steve. What's your next story?
All right. There is a significant buildup of American stealth bombers in the Indian Ocean. Now, I don't have any war plans here unless Tim, you were included on a signal chat about this.
Bada boom.
You weren't? No? Okay.
No, I wasn't.
Okay.
I don't want to be. I got enough trouble with my own. That's what the Bible says.
Well, according to TWZ, a significant force of B-2 Spirit stealth bombers are looking to be currently winding their way to the Indian Ocean island of Diego Garcia. And they are also there with support crew of a C-17 cargo planes, aerial refueling tankers, and the whole bit. So why would they be in the Indian Ocean? Well, the closest enemy of proximity to that would be Iran. So there's a lot of talk that perhaps as Iran is on the verge, if they don't already have a nuclear bomb, that something has to be done. And this would be done in conjunction with Israel, almost certainly.
And Diego Garcia is a well-known base, naval base. I think Air Force uses it. I think the UK uses it as well. It's for forward deployment of combat forces. And the fact, when you mentioned this in our story meeting, I was a little concerned because sending B-2 bombers as well as the support craft that allow them to fly these missions is either a simple warning to Iran to get them to back off, like with the Houthis in Yemen, a radical Islamic group in Yemen that Iran supports financially, or it is actually preparation for some sort of bombing inside Iran should Israel decide to attack.
So these are stealth bombers. So I'm assuming if they wanted to surprise Iran with a real attack, that they could have flown these things in at night, stealth-wise, and probably no one would have noticed. The fact that it's in the news suggests to me it's more the first thing, warning.
Well, yeah, we'll have to pay attention to what happens there. Let me ask you this, switching topics real quickly. We failed to mention this story yesterday because we just didn't have time. This congresswoman from Texas, her name is Representative Jasmine
Crockett.
Either Jasmine or Jasmine, I'm not sure. Crockett.
Jasmine. Yeah.
Jasmine?
Yeah.
Jasmine Crockett.
Jasmine Crockett, she's from the Dallas area. Do we have any audio on her yesterday?
I'm asking Brent to go back to yesterday's list.
Okay, so she is the Democrat congresswoman from Dallas, and she's getting a reputation for her rhetoric. Okay, her hyper, I don't know what you would call it, sensational rhetoric she's using against Republicans, and when you get criticized by women on The View, and you're a liberal, maybe you might want to consider that you've crossed the line here. she was talking about, if we have it, let me know, this quote, she called her governor of Texas, Governor Greg Abbott, who we all know. We have that? Okay, well, we'll just hear from the Congresswoman herself. Go ahead.
Because we in these hot Texas streets, honey. Y'all know we got Governor Hot Wheels down there. Come on now. And the only thing hot about him is that he is a hot mess, honey. So,
all right, stop right there. Listen, I don't know if she thinks she's a stand-up comedian or what there, and I don't know the audience she's speaking to.
To the HRC, Human Rights Campaign.
Human Rights Campaign?
Yeah.
They're the LGBT
yes.
group. Governor Abbott is disabled and has to use a wheelchair 24/7 or when he gets around,
yes.
right?
Yes.
He had some kind of
a tree fell on him while he was jogging.
An accident.
Yes.
A tree, yeah.
And so she refers to him as Governor Hot Wheels.
Yeah.
She's making, this is kind of interesting because she's speaking to a group who exists to so that gay and lesbian people are not made fun of.
Right.
Part of the Human Rights Campaign. So she's speaking to them, and she's making fun, Ed, of a gentleman who is disabled. She calls him Governor Hot Wheels. And then she tries to say she didn't mean anything by it.
Yeah, she's attempted to explain that she was not referring to him being in a wheelchair.
The lamest excuse ever.
Yeah, and nobody's really buying the explanation. So the question then becomes, well, should she apologize? She does not strike me as the kind of personality that is going to apologize. She's very bombastic. She frequently goes right to the edge with her language being provocative, and she's insulting to the opposing political party. It seems clear to me that she was mocking the fact that the governor's in a wheelchair and got plenty of laughs at the HRC gathering.
I don't know. Could anybody else make fun of a person who's disabled in this way and get away with it?
No, if this was all flipped.
If it were a Republican making fun of a Democrat governor as being governor of Hot Wheels, do you think that Republican would be able to get away with it without, at least without an apology? She didn't want to even issue an apology.
No.
Well, and her explanation included, she said, the fact that the president has mocked disabled people in the past, and that's highly debatable. Right? Yeah, that's not much of an explanation.
She said, let's hear that one more time, because it's hard for me to. Let's hear what she said to this group.
Because we in these hot Texas streets, honey. Y'all know we got Governor Hot Wheels down there. Come on now. And the only thing hot about him is that he is a hot mess, honey. So,
honey is
her explanation was
the group that she's calling them honey, right? Am I right?
I got something to say about this when Ed's done.
Well, I was just going to say, she's insisting that the remark referred to, I'm looking at an article from The Hill. I can't find an exact quote, but she insists that the remark referred to Abbott's habit of busing migrants to northern cities.
Although
that's why she called them.
She did like and use the Hot Wheels before he started doing that.
Yes.
I saw a video of Jasmine Crockett while she was running for Congress. She had the most proper English, zero accent, sounded very educated and everything. And now she's in Congress, and, all of a sudden she's real
using,
ghetto.
I would call it slang, kind of ghetto slang.
Yep.
That's what you want to call it. How they talk she's talking like a black woman talks who's trying to talk like a black woman who's been mocking something. Is that right?
I call people honey, and so no. Listen, Everyone
Instead
knows.
of talking more officially, I guess you could say.
I'm heading to HR after this.
Why did I offend you? Oh, Ed offended you?
You
No,
called
I
me
did-
honey.
I guess
Oh, you
I call
called him
people
honey?
all the time. No, listen. To me, she is aiming to become one of the leading voices in the Democratic Party. And to me, that's the explanation for what you're talking about, Tim, that she started off when she was running as a polished politician,
Right.
and now she's trying to be provocative. Because guess what? Her visibility has skyrocketed over the last couple of months.
She's the Texas
Purposefully.
AOC.
Yeah.
She's
aiming.
She's AOC brisket.
Yeah, but
Okay.
but they
Texas.
are the voice of what many in the Democratic Party now want to be out front,
Yeah.
representing the Democratic Party.
Yeah. Well, she's kind of taken up. What was the Congresswoman from Houston who was kind of like this, but she passed away last year?
Jackson, Congresswoman Jackson.
Sheila Jackson Lee.
Yeah. So anyway,
Did she take her seat?
No.
No,
This,
she's
Dallas.
She's from Dallas.
Crockett's from Dallas.
Okay.
She was from Houston. But anyway, listen, you just can't make fun of people who are in wheelchairs. I don't care if you're white, black, yellow.
Did President
I don't
Trump?
care if
I
you-
don't remember President Trump.
There was that one time that they said he made fun of a
Like someone with palsy or something?
a reporter who had cerebral palsy or something like
Okay.
that. And he may have.
Listen, if he did, that's wrong.
That's wrong. Yeah. All she needed to do was say, "That was I shouldn't have done that. That was a mistake.
I got carried away.
I should not make fun of people with disabilities, and I apologize. And I've written the governor apologizing."
Yeah.
Next question. That's all you
To
need
me,
to
that
do.
gets you more political street cred, if you will, with the party than doubling down.
That's right, honey. All right. Thank you for listening. Thanks to Fred, Ed, Chris, Steve, Brent Creeley, our producer, and
William Avery.
That's right, for being on the show. We'll see you tomorrow, everybody. Hello, this is Tim Wildman, president of American Family.